Hi. In our ongoing study of the tidal hexagrams, those are the hexagrams that chart the course from the light of the summer solstice to the dark of the winter solstice and back again. We have now got to hexagram number 23, which covers the ninth month, that is October, November. You might say valid from approximately the 8th of October to the 8th of November. This hexagram consists of the two trigrams mountain and earth, mountain on top of earth, youngest son on top of the mother. So a very interesting image right away. And what we'll be doing, as I normally do, is to restrict myself for the most part to looking directly at the images and the way they interact, as opposed to calling upon 3,000 years of Chinese and largely Confucian speculation. We're pretty much peeling this back to the legendary King Wen, who's the guy who's supposed to have given it a name, Bo, splitting or peeling, and written the line pertaining to the title, which basically says there is nowhere to go. So first of all, a little bit of technical information. The judgment is contemplation, the wind blows over the earth, behave with dignity and sincerity. The ideograph is a knife. It looks like this has something to do with carving, whittling, but also possibly to do with sacrifice, Wicker Man kind of stuff. These characters are very, very old. So it may be going back to very, very primitive practices. The ruler of the hexagram is the sixth, the top line, because its structure is starting from the bottom. Yin, 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 yang. So it has this yang line on top, kind of keeping a lid on it. It had to be that line because it's the only distinctive one, if you like. And of course that line is the line that represents the sage, the prophet, the spiritual advisor, and so on and so forth. So this speaks of being away with the fairies a little. There is correspondence, that is some kind of connection, support, joining between the third line, which is yin, and the sixth line, the top line, which is yang. Yin and yang are required to create fertility, if you like. So there's some kind of cooperation there, some kind of reaching out. In the stem and branch cycle that relates to Bazi, this equates to the water pig, which is the last pillar of that cycle of 60, which is interesting. You might call it the last ditch. Sometimes thought of as being a futile gesture, bow splitting. Anyway, a hexagram will tend to present us with the situation as it is and the changing lines where it's likely to lead. Those lines may, on the other hand, be offering a direction to go from here. This is perhaps the difference between observing as a diviner, who's asking, well, what's going on, and a healer who's saying, how do I help? So we may use it in either or both of those ways and other ways. To glimpse the future, we examine the progressed, which is where we would go if we changed the line. If we want to know how we get here, we would look at what's called the nuclear, which consists of making another hexagram out of the second, third, and fourth lines, and the third, fourth, and fifth on top of that. That will give you a hexagram that will tend to give you the source of whatever the problem is, or the situation is, or whatever your situation, the world's situation, or whatever. I imagine these methods were available to King Wen, because if you look at his very terse comments, he clearly has a huge understanding of human nature and of society, and he is alleged to have come up with these glosses while he was imprisoned, but it's pretty clear to me that he was able to see them in this way, because you can tell that from his text. They're extraordinary wise. Anyway, he may have devised some of these methods. Other than his own insight, he had the visual aspect of the hexagram, a deep knowledge of human beings in society, and the notions of yin and yang, though the notions of yin and yang will have been somewhat different, because historically, 3,000 years ago or whatever, yin and yang probably just meant bright and dark, or dark and bright. Bo is the last chance saloon. Being familiar with the upward progress of the lines, we can see there's only one yang line left now, the sixth. We know that the next organic change dissolves the sixth line and pushes a further yin line in the foot. That's the way that hexagrams work. Left to their own devices, they push the top line up and bring in a new line underneath. And that's the sequence of the tidal bars. So we're heading for the near total darkness of Kun, which is the next hexagram covering November, December, which is pure yin, an image of dissolution, evaporation. But for now, there is a little bit of yin, of yang. We can also see the lines are capped, as I said. There is a containment about it, a lid perhaps preventing the escape of the lower lines. The author of the lines, allegedly Dan, the Duke of Chu Wen's son, seems to have seen a bed which is laid increasingly bare over time. So the comments he makes about the lines refer to a bed being stripped. By implication, something being whittled away, carved, diminished, that kind of thing. We're, of course, principally approaching this program as a marker of the light perennially in transit, in which case we may factor in hexagram 46 to pin it to the final quarter of this particular year. In other words, hexagram 23 refers to this time of year every year. Hexagram 46, for reasons I'm not going to go into now, relates to this time of year, this particular metal rat year. Either way, Bo may represent a snapshot of our own condition, that of the world expressed in relationship, politics, commerce, or, for instance, the environment. It may be the answer to a question that you have intentionally posed, and all of these are valid approaches. We'll hopefully have some answers towards the end of this. Whichever position you take up, I will as ever be interpreting mostly from the information available to King Wen. All he tells us explicitly, by the way, is there's no profit in having a place to go. It's all over, no point in seeking meaning. Perhaps he saw the image of a house collapsing, which has been a popular perception. Just that roof and nothing else there, perhaps no walls. Perhaps also he saw the interaction of the devoted mother and the impassive third son in the trigrams. In the tidal Gua cycle, we're at a point where the yang is almost extinguished. The dark is here, next change no yang. There is nothing tangible to rely on. Acceptance is necessary, and trust. In the abstract, not in something particular. Not trusting God, not even trusting myself. Simply trust. Bo is, of course, twinned with Fu, the return, number 24, which is its polar opposite, a fresh start as opposed to no future. We will encounter Fu, the other side of Dungji, the winter solstice, when everything starts again, of course. The ideograph consists of a knife like Yunyan, the Bazi special star, followed by a character meaning either carve or divine. Perhaps there's no difference. Carving, divining, stripping back to the truth, back to the essential. Rations, clothing, luxury, perhaps. There's an aspect of vulnerability, of giving away, of sacrificing, of donating. Also of malleability. Change is possible, but it may be uncomfortable. If you're using the Yi as a guide, that may be helpful. We may have to descend the snake before we can climb the ladder. Some suggest examining structure of your house, structure of your life, structure of your work, the framework of our lives perhaps. What do we depend upon? Because when it's all yin, it's all up for grabs in a sense. The imbalance suggests only the weakest male is here and above it all. But it could be that this is the wisest of men, the Junsa, who knows that his power derives from the integration of yin and yang. This knife reminds us of the deep atavistic origins of the Yi. It's a bit Wicker Man, or Third Day, if you've been following that. When it appears in Bazi as a special start of Sansat Yunyan, it suggests carelessness, excessive speed, impatience and frustration. Yunyan, or Goat Blade, is the Sansat of busted wing mirrors. When we see this in a Bazi, we know someone is out of touch with the appropriate pace of their life. They're going too fast, they're impatient, they're forcing things. In the Bible, it's the story of Abraham and Isaac, where Abraham is invited to sacrifice his eldest son, and that's often interpreted as being about trust in God. I think it's more about trusting in a good outcome. Well, that's another story. Perhaps it's also about King Zhou Xin, the so-called tyrant of Shang, who imprisoned King Wen, and whose hobby appears to be in the flaying alive of those who displeased him. The ruling line had to be the sixth. It's not central, it's not correct, but it's the only firm place. A handhold, maybe. It's the last ditch, taking us to heaven by way of earth. So, the lines. And you would read these if you drew this and these lines were changing. Line 1 is peeling in order to free comment or as a result of unwise or unhelpful communication. Cutting ties, it's uncomfortable, may even smack of victimization. And that change brings you, which will indicate what's actually going on here, into number 27, Yi, Mountain Over Thunder. The corners of the mouth. The question here is, how nourishing is the food we put into our mouths? And how nourishing are the words that come out of our mouths? So that's line 1's directive. Line 2, peeling the lower body. Encroaching on mobility, peeling your legs, you probably, paralysis, abandonment. Avoid overreaction. There are no rules, but flexibility may help. Take no decisions before or after they're needed. Jung Yan is about poor timing. And if we change line 2, if we have line 2 as a changing line, it will change to Meng, which is mountain over water, hexagram 4, youthful folly and attempting the impossible through inexperience, a lack of sage advice. Mountain over water, just think of the image of that. You're not going to be able to take a mountain over water. Line 3 corresponds with the 6th, as I said. You can draw support from authority. It's a peeling of the trunk, still this peeling metaphor, trope. Cutting ties, perhaps a necessary transformation or reinvention. Maybe you're being called to transform, to reinvent. It may be that you need to see a potential transformation as being the appropriate move. And this advice may help in that. It's a warning or an admonition not to be bent out of shape. You need to know whose side you're on, but don't expect agreement necessarily. Changes to Gen, mountain over mountain, which is hexagram 52, standstill, major withdrawal, everything stops. Line 4 is peeling the shoulders, so it's coming up the body here, which many of the hexagrams work up the body in that way. Hexagram 31, which is about charisma, is a good example. So line 4, peeling the shoulders, a burden, a cross to bear, on the shoulders again. Could be, holding the cross, carrying the cross to Golgotha, that kind of thing. Could be heading for disaster because of misrepresentation. The mattress now of the bed is on fire, apparently. And it changes to Jin, fire over earth, hexagram 35, progress, the sunrise, which is a wonderful image of the sun shedding light on a brand new day. Everything fresh and ready to start all over again. Hexagram number 35. Line 5 is lofty and central, but it's weak and it's incorrect. A yin line should not be at an odd position. An untrustworthy prince, but a worthy vassal. No blame, draw light on the above. So this is about weak leadership. It's about leadership that is magically minded as opposed to miraculously minded. Marianne Williamson makes a clear distinction between magical thinking and miraculous thinking. Magical thinking is when we say that our guardian angel is going to find us a parking space. It seems to me your guardian angel has got better things to do. You can find a parking space. You can create a parking space. Those are within your resources. Whereas miraculous thinking is a process of very deep honesty. Line 5 implies that intimacy is the solution and that it is a yin quality. Seek the advice of women. Many of the speculations on this line are about that. And and it changes to Guan, wind over earth, hexagram 20, which of course was the previous one, which is what happens at line 5 in the previous line. Line 6, cooperation is advised. Receive advice in order to have your own heard. The right answer is usually yes. The karmic balance may be out. You may need to mend some fences. And it changes to Kun, earth over earth, the mother. Hexagram 2, the receptive. Cooperation, but also free fall. Near total darkness, but safety. It is a maternal image. It is a place, that we return to safely. So that is hexagram number 23, bow splitting. The next one for November is Kun, earth over earth, number 2, the receptive. And we will talk about that sometime early next month. I look forward to that. Thank you. Bye-bye.